Get more ways to play on every sport, baseball, golf, and Canadian football. Full swing. It started. The summer is here. And the action, where do you find it, guys?
Sports Interaction.
That's right. Canada Sportsbook. Before the game starts, live and play, or, one of the many prop bets. Doing it right since 1997. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now to see all that sports betting has to offer. That's head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That is sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Kevin Fiala was had for, it was a pretty solid deal, unless to me, I was like, okay, I hope when that trade was announced, I hope LA had the chance to talk to Fiala.
Can you say the trade?
Oh, the trade. Well, first off, I'm going to tell you that Fiala signed with the Kings for $7.7875.
Yeah.
A weird number.
For sure. And what's weird is he doesn't wear any of those numbers. Is he feeling okay? Isn't it weird that he doesn't have that?
So the Wild.
God, people are weird.
The Wild got defensive prospect Brock Faber and LA's first round pick, 19th overall in this year's draft.
So essentially a first and a second, because Brock Faber was a 2020 second round pick.
And apparently he's highly regarded, though. He's a captain of his team and everything, wherever he plays. So that's great. And here's the thing. The Wild, buying out Zach Parise and Ryan Suter last year, they got some hefty cap penalties. It will cost them $12.743 million in dead cap space next season and $14.743 dead cap space the 2 years after that.
Wow.
There are so many Wild players who are going to play for the Coyotes next year.
That's a good point.
It's such an interesting trade because Fiala was an RFA at the time of the deal, and then he signs the extension. You rarely see teams have to give up on an RFA who's a really great player who's worth all the money that he's going to get. Like Fiala had a year where he's worth this $7 million. And this is a team who's, because of their decision to buy out those two guys, have their hand forced now, where they're giving up on really good players. And it's a shame.
Jesse, it's interesting that you say that. Here's what Bill Guerin had to say about it. He said, Kevin, had a great year, and we're just not going to be able to do it. We knew that. Fiala's camp knew that. There was no sense in screwing around, trying to fit this under this, or give him a lowball deal. It just wasn't going to work. We knew we were going to have to move him. It just didn't fit.
That's so disappointing. Like
it sucks. It sucks for the fans, right? Like, what's the point of this? Why are we doing this?
And it's one of the deals that Paul Fenton nailed.
Oh, it's Paul Fenton's man. That's his man.
Dude, the trade was 1-for-1, February 25th, 2019. Mikael Granlund for Kevin Fiala. Dude.
Fleece. What a deal.
Fleece. And it didn't look like that at the time.
Yeah.
No. When he got fired, people were like, what the hell? Because Fiala didn't have a good year when he went to Minnesota.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. And Granlund was like a decent guy.
Yeah.
And now Fiala...
now he's a shitty guy.
Fiala was a bit of a late
sorry.
bloomer, but he was ridiculously highly touted in his draft year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that because it was Nylander's draft year. But he was one of those weird picks, and we've talked about this before, where we're like, he's going to be a star, and he's going mid-first round.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Like PK Subban, I remember. He's going to be a star. Second round pick.
Why?
I don't know. There's always Alex DeBrincat. He's going to be a star. Second round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Someone explain. I don't get it. But Fiala did take a while.
It's interesting. I know that they have these rules in here to stop teams from making the types of deals that Parise and Suter made with the Wild, and I guess the Wild made the deals. But that type of system doesn't even exist anymore. It does sort of rank, like, I understand people that want teams punished, like with the New Jersey Devils, for instance, when they did the Kovalchuk contract,
right,
and they were penalized, and then Kovalchuk left, so they're like, oh, come on, unpenalize us. We didn't do it that bad. Look, he left. And they got their picks back, right? They got it. I think they got a first round pick back or something like that.
Lou Lamoriello just calls up Gary Bettman, and he doesn't even introduce himself. Gary Bettman speaking. What size are your shoes? All right, yeah, you can have your you can have your pick back.
He's got pics of Gary somewhere.
He's
doing something.
Just Gary, whatever size concrete shoe you need.
But here's
Lou Lamoriello will provide.
So this is a very healthy hockey market with a really good team. What benefit to the NHL does this have? And I know, let's talk about the Kings deal in a second here. But I looked at this deal. What benefit do you get out of taking around 20% away from the Minnesota Wild in terms of their cap expenditure for the next 3 years? What's the benefit?
So you should say,
how does the NHL
they should be
win?
let off the hook?
I'm saying that these rules probably should have been erased when they renegotiated the CBA in 2020 during the pandemic.
So I'll agree with that. I'll agree that they should have maybe figured that out. However, Bill Guerin knew the risk.
He did
when he made the deal.
But let's and I agree with you, and you're 100% right. And this is the way it has to happen now.
Right. But should it still be the case?
Why is that happening?
I wonder if they're just gonna is this a pressing topic, or is it a topic that's going to take care of itself in a couple of years?
It'll take care of itself, but in the meantime, you're hurting one of your best American markets.
Yeah, and helping one of the best ones too.
Oh, sure.
LA's. I know this is a wild thing to say about a team that lost in the first round to a team that lost in the third round, but I think the LA Kings are a cup contender.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
You get, because if you take their playoff team, it's like you're up Kevin Fiala and Drew Doughty.
And another year of Byfield and Dursey and all these guys growing up a little bit.
Yeah, Grunstrom.
Oh yeah,
and Akil Thomas, and oh my God.
Yeah,
that's a really good team.
But again,
I'll throw Cal Peterson in there.
You've got fans that absolutely adore this team. Why? Why are we doing this? What was, other than financial punishment, how does this help the franchise? How does this help the game? I'd
have to ask Bill Guerin. Because, listen, this could have happened to anyone, right?
Yes.
If this happened to, it's happening to the Canucks right now in a way, the cap recapture penalty for Roberto Luongo. And
if you're pissed at the owner, here's the deal. If you're pissed at the owner, make the owner, when they trade the contract or buy out the contract, pay the contract in full. So the owner gets the hit. So don't be a fucking idiot.
Wow.
So you'd say to the guy, don't be a fucking idiot. Wherever this player ends up, you're paying the rest of it, but it's not going to count against the team.
I'll throw this out there too. The rule applies hard to the Minnesota Wild. The rule does not appear to apply to the Chicago Blackhawks and Edmonton Oilers in the case of Duncan Keith. Because didn't Bill Daly say, because the Oilers were supposed to get, if Duncan Keith were to retire, they were supposed to get a cap benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he's saying no. Why?
And it's a different circumstance.
It is a different circumstance,
but
it's
the same backdiving deal, is it
it's
not?
A
No, but they're
deal.
they're not applying the same rule here. One, you're applying the rule of a cap recapture for a retirement on a player, and the other one, you're applying a rule of a buyout of a contract. Those are completely different rules.
Okay. They are, but it's two different things being applied to contracts that don't exist anymore, like they're illegal. And this one's hard and fast, and we're sticking to it. Yeah. And this one's
the buyout thing on the contract exists on any contract. Like that's a rule that applies to that.
So they're applying
the Suter and Parise contract. The cap recapture penalties aren't applied because they're illegal contracts.
That's true.
That's true. They're just contracts. I think the rule should be that there should be no penalties for buying out a player. I think if a player doesn't want to, I think
that does benefit rich teams, and people would have a problem with that.
So
see, you're looking at it. You're looking at it under the guise of no one's taking rampant advantage of that right now, which is true. Teams would take rampant advantage of the Leafs would buy out players every single year if there was no penalty.
Yeah, like Tavares would be bought out this year.
Just
not because we don't love him, but it'd be like, all right, John, we're going to buy you out the rest of your deal, and we're going to pay you $6 million.
Yeah, should we trade a draft pick to the Ottawa Senators so that they can take on some of our contracts like Connor Brown, or should we just buy him out? Should we offer a sweetener to Chicago or whoever for Peter Mrazek? No, just buy him out. It would be rampant, and it would be 8-10 teams taking advantage of it. Mm-hmm. How many people do you think Vegas would have bought out?
I think
everybody.
If you negotiate into the contract that, I think it shouldn't be non-guaranteed. Like I'm pulling this from the NFL in that they you can cut guys. They have non-guaranteed contracts. You can cut players at all.
Which we don't want that either.
I don't want non-guaranteed contracts, but I think there should be some leeway to where if Parise and Suter don't want to be on the Minnesota Wild, because
sounds like they both did.
The GM doesn't want them on the Minnesota Wild anymore. And he says, because if he kept them on the team, it's for, what was it, like 3 more years, it would have been $14 million against the cap for them to play for them. Mm-hmm. And the GM says, okay, it's worth us to have $14 million for two guys to not play than have $14 million for two guys to actually
it
play.
It shows you the reported effect that their mentality was having in the dressing room.
And I think
which is a conversation.
There should be some easier way to negotiate this through rather than just this dead money for two guys to not
Especially
play.
on contracts that I'm with you on that, because these contracts don't exist.
And
they're not a part of the current
and
CBA.
They're playing for different teams.
You owe 2/3 of a contract to a guy or 1/3 of a contract to a guy just arbitrarily based on their age.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I
either.
think that goes, yeah, it does, because it means
Does it?
the reason they do that is because it's supposed to be like you've got more runway to make more money. That's the idea. So at 35, when you sign a contract, your ability to make up that money that you would have lost in a buyout situation is far less than at 25 when you get a third of it. At least that's the theory. And listen, I'm not saying it's a perfect theory, but that's why they implemented it that way.
The theory's flawed because you can't judge how many years a guy has on his NHL life.
Right.
You know, like a 25-year-old might play 2 seasons in the NHL and be done.
Bowen Byram almost retired this year. You know
Why?
what I mean? Because of, I believe, concussions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like he had a really tough season. Ended it a Stanley Cup champion and playing the best hockey ever.
That sounds like the older guys during the CBA negotiations snuck something in for themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like,
Oh, there's a whole Alan Walsh episode coming on that one day.
I'm not.
You're not going to like some of the players that you grew up as
I know.
thinking were your heroes.
I'm not going to go to bat for Tony DeAngelo ever, but they knew they didn't like this player. They knew he was a pain in the ass. They signed him to a $9 million contract. Let him play
20 games?
No, I think it was like 3.
Oh, was that it?
It was like 3 or 4 games. And they're like, that's it. And they held him and then they bought him out at 1/3.
Yes.
Why did the Rangers get let off the hook? Like,
Because he's younger. And his
If there's-
ability to replace that income. That's what it comes down. It's labor law. It's your ability to make that money back. And the theory is that if you're younger, your ability to bounce back from a buyout is much greater than if you're older. And then if you again, it also comes down to, I think, rich teams too, right?
Yeah.
If you're UFA, you're 35, and the Leafs, let's say it's the Leafs, because the Leafs are the one of the richest teams, them in New York. They go out and they sign 4 Patrick Marleaus.
Sure.
And they only have to buy them out at 1/3 the cost or whatever. It's a hell of a lot easier for a team like that to do that. But if you go and you buy 4 Patrick Marleaus and you got to buy them out at full, well, that's a different conversation.
what happens the first time a player like that gets bought out, signs for $1 million, a much reduced contract, in his first game, blows his knee, he's never going to play again.
Well, then he's LTIR.
He's LTIR, but what does that do for him? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's pretend DeAngelo got hurt first game with the Hurricanes.
Okay.
He'll never play again. So he's just done.
Yeah.
So, like, my ability to make money for the rest of my career
But you
is
incur
gone.
it in a game like the NHL, you incur risk like that. That is part of it.
Fuck.